Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala wa ba'd. So we continue with our study of the Risale of Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad ibn Abdul-Wahhab, rahmatullah alayhi, to the people of Qasim. And we're still in the section of the book where he is refuting Ibn Sahin and that which he made of claims and slanders towards him. And amongst that which he slandered the author, Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad ibn Abdul-Wahhab, with, he says, وَإِنِّي أُكَفِّرُ مَنْ وَإِنِّي أُكَفِّرُ مَنْ تَوَسَّلَ بِالصَّالِحِينَ. And he claims that I make takfir upon those who make tawassul by way of the salihin. Right? وَإِنِّي أُكَفِّرُ الْبُوصَيْرِي. And that I have declared al-Busayri to be a kafir as well. لِقَوْلِهِ. And this is based upon the statement of al-Busayri, يَا أَكْرَمَ الْخَلْقِ وَإِنِّي, or the statement that he made, Ya Akram al-Khalq. And he has these lines of poetry. It's an individual named al-Busayri, and he's going to quote some, or Shaykh Sadi is going to quote some of these lines of poetry. And these lines of poetry that al-Busayri has in his poem he has called Al-Burda, it contains kufr all throughout it. Right? It contains kufr and calling upon the Messenger of Allah and the association of the Messenger of Allah alayhi wasallam as a partner alongside Allah tabarak wa ta'ala. This no doubt is kufr. Right? But as it relates to takfir upon al-Busayri himself, some of the mashayikh have declared him to be a kafir, but the shaykh, he's saying that this individual, Ibn Sahin, claims that I have made takfir upon Busayri when I've not. Right? I've not made takfir upon him. He says that, وإني أقول لو أقدر على حدم قبة رسول الله لهدمتها. And he claims as well that I have said that if I had the ability to destroy the dome over the grave of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam, then I would do so. Those who have been to the Prophet's Masjid in Medina, you know where his grave is at. And there is a green dome over where his grave is at. Well, this dome, it was not built over the grave of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam. And Shaykh Sadi is going to explain the reasoning behind it. He's going to explain in detail what actually went on with this particular dome. At any rate, these are the claims that he made. Number one, that the Shaykh is going to refute here, that he declares takfir upon those who make tawassul with the righteous, right? Those who are dead inside of their graves. That the Shaykh, he said that everyone who does that is a kafir. Okay, this is one thing. And secondly, that he declared al-Busayri himself to be a kafir. And thirdly, that Ibn Sahin said that the Shaykh said that if he had the ability to destroy the dome that was over the grave of the Messenger of Allah, he has the green dome that we see, then he would do so. Now, so Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan, he mentions an explanation of this concerning his statement, إِنِّي أُكَافِرُ مَنْ تَوَسَّلَ بِالصَّالِحِينَ, that I declare takfir upon those who make tawassul with the righteous. قول ابن صحيح هذا الحكم على الإطلاق ليس بالصحيح. Meaning that the statement of Ibn Sahim regarding the Shaykh, that he made a blanket type of takfir upon a whole class, a group of people, he said that this is wrong. The Shaykh never made a blanket type of takfir. He says, for tawassul fihi tafsir, for this issue of a tawassul has details to it. There are details to it. No doubt it's wrong. No doubt it's wrong. There are details and levels to its wrongness, if that's a word, right? So he says that, إن كان يصرف شيئا من العبادة لمن يتوسل به. If a person is making tawassul with someone, right, and he's rendering that individual some type of ibadah, he's giving some type of worship to the one who's making tawassul with. Naam ka ubad al-qubur, such as what is done by the worshippers of graves, those who worship graves and they go to the inhabitants of these graves making dua to them and the likes of this. Naam, he says, alladhina yathbahun al-amwat, those who slaughter to the deceased and they make vows in their names. وَيَسْتَغِيثُونَ بِهِمْ, and they make istighatha with them, they seek salvation from them. Old such and such who is dead in this grave, save me, aghithni. Oh Abdul-Qadir al-Jilani, oh al-Badawi, oh this one and that one, save me in this situation. Now, he says that if they're doing this, فَهَذَا شِرْكٌ أَكْبَرٌ, this is a major shirk, right? Giving worship to anyone other than Allah Azza wa Jal is major shirk. Right? It's major shirk. أما إن كان لا يصرف لهم شيئا من العبادة. But if they are not rendering to them some act of worship like this, right? إنما يتوسلوا إلى الله بهم. But rather they are seeking a means of approach to Allah Azza wa Jal by way of these individuals who may be deceased, or they may think that they have a special status with Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, and like this. He says, meaning, بِوَاسِطَتِهِمْ. They're taking them as intermediaries, believing that they have some status with Allah and that they can get them near to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Shaykh Salih, he says, هذا bid'ah. This innovation. It's bid'ah, right? It's an innovation. But this type here, as long as it's not indicative of worship, right? They're just saying that, you know, this person, he can get me closer to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. So I'm using their status to get them closer to Allah Azza wa Jal. Then this is bid'ah, right? And it's not disbelief. كالسؤال بالجاه. For example, a person asks Allah, "Oh Allah, I ask you by the status that the Messenger of Allah has with you to grant me such and such," right? This is bid'ah. There's no basis for it. There's no basis for it. But he's not making dua to the Messenger here. He's calling upon Allah by way of the status which the Prophet has. This is bid'ah, has no basis in our religion whatsoever. It's different from making dua, "O Messenger of Allah, do such and such for me," right? That's dua, right? And it's clear. Now, he says that, "Aw bihaq fulan," or calling upon Allah by the right of so-and-so. Now, he says, "Aw bi nabiyik," or calling upon Allah, "Oh Allah, I call upon you by your prophet." Naam, aw bi abdika fulan, or by your slave such and such. Min ghayri an yasrif lahu shay'an min ibadah, without rendering to these individuals anything of worship. Innama ja'alahu wasita, but rather he's simply making this individual to be an intermediary between himself and Allah Azza wa Jal in the acceptance of his dua. فَهَذِهِ bid'atun. This is an innovation. It's bid'ah. Because Allah Azza wa Jal has commanded us to make dua to him directly without utilizing anyone's status or anyone's, rank and position or right? As Allah Ta'ala mentions inside of his book, إِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكُمْ أُدْعُونِي, when your Lord said, make dua to me, أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ, I'm going to answer you. Right? He commands us to make dua to him, then promises he's going to answer our supplication. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ عَنْ عِبَادَتِي سَيَدْخُلُونَ جَهَنَّمَ دَاخِرِينَ. Indeed, those who are too proud to worship me, meaning by making dua to me, they should enter the hellfire in a state of humiliation. Now, so this is what Allah Ta'ala has commanded us with, to make dua to him alone without taking anyone as an intermediary between ourselves and him Tabarak wa Ta'ala. وَهُنَاكَ تَوَسُّلْ بِالصَّالِحِينَ مَشْرُوعٌ. There is another type of tawassul with the salihin that is legislated. Right? There's another type of tawassul, seeking a means of approach or nearness to Allah by way of the righteous, that is legislated permissible. And that is a tawassul ilallah bi du'a'ihim, that is asking someone who you believe is righteous to make dua for you. Right? You ask someone who you believe this person, he is a righteous person, he's a good brother, I believe his dua has a chance of being accepted, or so and so, can you make dua to Allah for me? Now, remember me in your dua, due to the fact that this person, maybe he's righteous, or maybe he's going for umrah or something like that, or hajj, he's traveling, the likes of this, and you tell the brother, remember your brother in your dua while you're traveling. Remember your brother in your dua when you go to Mecca, and the likes of this, right? He says that وَقَدْ تَوَصَّلَ الصَّحَابَ بِدُعَاء بَعْضِهِمْ. As some of the Sahaba, they would make this type of tawassul by asking others amongst the Sahaba to make dua for them, as occurred with the dua al-istisqa. When Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, he went to Al-Abbas, right, and invoked Al-Abbas, or told Al-Abbas to make dua al-istisqa, to seek rain. Make dua to seek rain, because Al-Abbas, he was righteous. He was the uncle of the Prophet alayhi salam, and he had righteousness with him. He was known for uprightness, and so therefore he asked him to make the dua al-istisqa, right, for seeking rain. Now, and the likes of this. وَقَوْلُهُمْ إِنَّ الشَّيْخ يُكَفِّرْ بِالتَّوَسُّلِ مُطْلَقًا هَذَا كَذِبٌ. So therefore, the statement that the Shaykh, he made a blanket type of takfir upon all of the people who did a particular action, this is a lie upon the Shaykh. It's a lie upon the Shaykh. In the Shaykh, يفسر في هذا, because the Shaykh, he considered this to be something that was detailed, right? So these are the details of it, as you mentioned. If a person makes tawassul with someone other than Allah Azza wa Jal by rendering worship to them, making dua to them, oh such and such, oh so and so, and like this, shirk, major shirk, right? If a person is making tawassul with them, but he is not rendering to them any form of worship, but rather utilizing what he believes to be their right or their rank or their status or position. Oh Allah, I ask you by the status of so-and-so and by the right of so-and-so, this is bid'ah, right? So he's still wrong, right? But not as wrong as the one who's making shirk, right? Now, if it be that a person is simply asking someone who they believe to be upright and righteous to make dua to Allah for them, this is legislated. This is permissible, it's fine. Now, these are its details. وقال ابن صحين عن الشيخ إنه يكافر البوصيري لقوله يا أكرم الخلق هذه مسألة تكفير المعين. And then Ibn Sahimi mentioned regarding the Shaykh that he declared takfir upon al-Busayri specifically due to him saying Ya Akram al-Khalqi, O most noble of the creation, right? Then this is the mas'ala of takfir al-ain, of making takfir upon a specific individual. Making takfir upon a specific individual. وكان الشيخ لا يرى تكفير المعين, and the Shaykh, he did not make takfir upon a specific individual, right? So we know in the issue of takfir and declaring one to be a disbeliever, there is a general type of takfir. Whoever does this is a kafir, right? And then there's takfir upon a specific person, so-and-so, the son of so-and-so, you are a kafir. These are two different things, right? These are two different things. So if we say that, for example, whoever gives worship to anyone other than Allah is a kafir, it's a general statement. Then this is a true and correct statement. But when it comes down to specific individuals, then there are details to it. And there are conditions for the establishment of takfir upon someone. There's certain conditions that have to be fulfilled, certain preventative factors that have to be removed, right? Is he ignorant, or did he know what he was doing? Was he forced or compelled to do what he did, or did he do it by way of his own choice? And like this, we have to establish all of these things, right? Did he actually know that this statement or this action was a statement action of kufr or not? And like this, right? Maybe the person had a misunderstanding. Maybe he had an erroneous, interpretation of some text that he read, and he held this to be okay, right? And thus he did that. Maybe he wasn't clear on the issue. So, takfir upon a specific individual, it's a very touchy issue, very touchy issue, and you find the ulama of Ahl Sunnah to be the most distant of the people from it. Now, while at the same time, they don't mind calling a spade a spade. As Shaykh Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymin, he mentioned concerning this issue that when it comes down to the issue of takfir, if the Quran and the Sunnah establishes the kufr of anybody, then we speak with what the Quran and the Sunnah say. This person's a kafir, right? But this issue of takfir upon a specific person, you have to be very, very careful as it relates to it. Because you have the statement of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam that whoever says to his brother, O kafir, whoever says to his brother, O kafir, then that statement, it goes up to the heavens, and then it comes back down, and if it is applicable to the person that he said it about, then the statement applies. But if it is not applicable, right, then it comes back to this particular individual. Shaykh, he explained, right? The scholars differ about what does it mean that it's going to come back to the individual who said it, right? Some of them say that if he says it about a person and it's not actually true, then he is the kafir, right? Some say no, it doesn't mean that. It means that before long, right, he will do something or say something that will bring about his disbelief, right? Before long, he would end up doing something or saying something that will bring about his own disbelief. And like this. So it's a very dangerous issue. At any rate, this individual Abu Sayyidi, he had speech that was kufr. He had speech that was disbelief. Naam, as he mentioned, addressing and calling upon the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam, Ya Akram al-Khalqi, O most noble of the creation, Man li min, or man aludhu bihi, siwaka inda hulul al-hadith al-umami. He says that, O most noble of the creation, I have no one else to seek refuge from. I have no one else to seek refuge from other than you. Talking about the Prophet alayhi salam. Right? Isti'adha. And this is ibadah. I have no one else to seek refuge from other than you if some calamity were to befall me. فَإِنَّ مِن جُودِكَ الدُّنْيَا وَضُرَّتُهَا. Because from that which you own, speaking about the Prophet still, is the whole dunya and the like thereof. And the like thereof. The term durra is, technically means like a co-wife, right? Durra, this is the Arabic word for co-wife. So he's saying that the Prophet owns the dunya and the like thereof. Naam. He said, Min ulumika ilm al-lawh wal-qalami. And from your knowledge, talking about the Prophet, from that which you know is what's in the preserved tablet and what the pen wrote. Right? This is shirk. This is shirk. Right? So these it's more. This poem that he has called Burda has kufr all throughout it. Right? Many statements of disbelief. Now, إلى آخر ما قال في البردة, to the end of that which he mentioned inside of his poem called Burda. وهذا كفر. This is disbelief. This is disbelief. لكن الشخص قد يكون ما بلغته الحجة. However, the person can be such that maybe the evidence didn't reach him. Maybe the evidence didn't reach him that this is kufr. Right? You shouldn't say that. It's a disbelief because only Allah knows what's in the preserved tablet. Right? Maybe he doesn't know. Maybe, the hujjah didn't reach him. Or he has some other erroneous understanding that made him arrive at this statement. فَلَا يُكَفَّرْ حَتَّى تُقَامَ عَلَيْهِ الْحُجَّةِ. So therefore, he's not to be declared a kafir until the evidence is established against him. Right? Now, وَأَيْضًا هُوَ لَا يَعْلَمْ مَا خُتِمَ لَهُ بِهِ. Also, we don't know what a person's end state will be. We don't know what the end state will be. قال ابن سحيم عن الشيخ أنه قال لو أقدر على حدم قبة رسول الله لهدمتها. Likewise, his statement in which he said, or he claimed that the author, that the Shaykh Muhammad Abdul-Wahhab said that if I had the ability to destroy the dome over the grave of the Messenger of Allah, that I would destroy it. هذا من الكذب على الشيخ. This also is a lie upon the Shaykh. Because the Messenger of Allah عليه الصلاة معلوم أنه دفن في بيته. Because it's known that the Prophet عليه الصلاة, he was not like this dome was built and he was buried inside of it. The Prophet was buried where he died at. He was buried inside of his home, right? As all of the prophets, this is the sunnah of the prophets. When they die, they are buried exactly where they die at, right? So he died in his house, in the home of Aisha. So he was buried right there where he died at. And this is muhafadha alayh, in order to protect and to safeguard him from gulu, from the extremism of the people. People going to extremes. He says, Naam, وَبَيْتَهُ لَهُ جَدْرَانْ وَلَهُ سَقَفْ. And his house, it has walls, has two walls, and it had a roof. Naam, فَسَقَفْ مَوْجُودٌ مِنْ وَقْتِ دَفْنِهِ. So the roof, the ceiling of it, it was there from the time that he was buried. It was always there, right? It was always there. So it's not like, okay, they buried him and then we're going to put the dome over his grave. He was buried inside of his house. The dome came later. The dome came much later. He says that. Now, and so he says that for Saqaf, now, وغاية ما هنالك أنه أزيل السقف وجعل على شكل قبة. He says, and so, what ended up happening is that the Saqaf, the actual ceiling that was originally there, it ended up being removed. And the dome was built later. The dome was built later. He says that for Shaykh لا يرى أن هذا منكر. So the Shaykh, he didn't hold this to be something evil or something munkar. He didn't hold it to be something evil or munkar. Now, he says that for Rasul dufina fi bayti. So the Messenger of Allah, he was buried inside of his home. واستمر مقبورا في بيته محافظا alayhi min al-ghulu. And he continued to be buried in the exact same spot where he died at in order to protect him from ghulu and the extremism of the people. كما تقول عائشة, Aisha, she said when she mentioned the prohibition of the Messenger of Allah alayhi wasallam of al-ghulu in regards to the graves, he said, لولا ذلك لأبرز قبره. Were it not for this, then I would have made his grave to be distinct. It's the Prophet alayhi wasallam. Were it not for the fact that he warned against extremism and going to excess is a really issue, I would have made his grave to be distinct. He says, however, he was afraid. The Prophet alayhi wasallam, he feared that his grave should be taken as a masjid. He feared that his grave should be taken as a place of worship. Now, he says, فَدُفِنَ فِي بَيْتِهِ مُحَافَظَةً عَلَيْهِ مِنَ الْغُلُو. So he was buried. He repeats, he was buried inside of his home in order to protect him from al-ghulu. Now, and so therefore, they accused the Shaykh of saying that that this dome over the Prophet ﷺ's grave is similar to the grave of others who have domes over them. Right? You have some people who if a particular person dies, right, then they will put a bigger structure over his grave because to show that this grave is special, has so and so in it, right? Has so and so ibn so and so in it, and he's a big sheikh, he's a big Sufi, alim, and like this. And so they are saying that the sheikh, he deems that dome to be similar to the other domes over, like the Sufis and the likes of this. He says that when it's different in nature, right? We explain how it's different in nature. He was buried inside of his home, whereas these other individuals, when they die, they're going to bring a bigger dome. And the bigger the dome is, the bigger the structure is, the bigger the sheikh, right? Same thing for the pyramids. This is how you find these pyramids in Egypt. So Egypt has a lot of pyramids, right? There's these main ones that are known in Giza. That's the ones you see on the postcards and on National Geographic and like this. Those are the main pyramids that are known. But there's pyramids in reality all over Egypt. Now, but the pyramids, all they are is essentially big graves, the giant graves. Under each grave is a dead king, the dead Egyptian king. Those fara'ina, the pharaohs. And the bigger the pyramid, the bigger the king, right? The more important he is to Egyptian history and the likes of this, right? And so you find people repeating the likes of these actions today. Now, that the bigger the Sufi Shaykh is, the bigger the structure is going to be over his grave. Now, so they're saying that the Shaykh, he deemed this dome to be similar to those domes when it is totally different in nature. And the Shaykh himself was refuting his claim. I never said that. He said, I said that, but I never said that I would destroy this grave, because he didn't even deem it to be something which is munkar. Now, he says that in بأن يقول إن قبة الرسول مثل قباب التي على قبور مبنية عليها تعظيما لها, that he deemed that this dome to be similar to those other domes which are over graves, which are built over graves in order to magnify them. هذا غلط. This is an error, a mistake. لأن القباب المبنية على القبور مخالفة للشرع, because those domes are in opposition to the legislation. Those domes are in opposition to the legislation. يعني بأن يدفن الميت ويقام على قبره بناية وقبة, meaning that a person is buried, and then as soon as he's buried, let's put a dome over him. Let's build a particular edifice or a type of structure over him and put a dome over that structure. Now, أو يجعل مسجدا, or it is made to be a place of worship. It's taken as a place of worship or a masjid. هذا الذي نهى عنه الرسول. This is that which the Messenger of Allah alayhi wasallam prohibited. لأن هذا وسيلة إلى الشرك, because it is a pathway to polytheism. And the Sahaba, no doubt, they are the best of generations of this ummah. They're the best of the generations of this ummah. And they are buried where? In Al-Baqi'. They're buried in Al-Baqi'. Now, it's the graveyard right outside of the Prophet's masjid in Medina. Many Sahaba are buried there. Sahaba are buried other places as well. Now, some of them, they travel and they died in other places outside of the Hijaz. Now, some died in Mecca, some died in, in different battles. The martyrs of Uhud are buried right there at Mount Uhud. And like this. He says, but meaning the Sahaba, they're buried right there in Al-Baqiyah. And there are no structures over their graves. There's no structures over their graves, in spite of the fact that they are the best of this ummah. Now, إنما الرسول عليه السلام عزل وجعل في بيته حفاظا عليه من الغلو. But the Prophet عليه السلام, he passed away and was buried inside of his home as a means of protection from al-ghulu. وفرق بين من بني عليه غلوا فيه وبين من دفن في بيته حفاظا عليه من الغلو. And there's a difference between one who is buried, he dies and is buried, and then he builds something over him, and how the Prophet ﷺ, he passed away inside of his house, and he's buried inside of his house as a means of protection from extremism. فالبناء على القبور تعظيم لها منهي عنه. So building over graves in order to show reverence for them is something that is prohibited, and it is a pathway amongst the pathways that lead to extremism and polytheism. Now, people, they come through graves, and you see it in the graves of the kuffar, right? Those who perhaps can afford a bigger structure, they have all types of magnificent things over the graves. Now, those who had money, so this person, he was rich, he had money, look at what he has over his grave, right? Those who maybe they don't have a little small headstone or something like that, maybe he was a poor person, he didn't have that much money, so he wasn't that important. And like this, it's a pathway to shirk. وَمِمَّا يَجْعَلْ الْعَوَامُ مُتَعَلَّقُونَ بِهَا. It is from those things that make the commoners have attachment to the graves. They see them and they know that someone's important must be buried there. However, the grave of the Messenger of Allah alayhi was such that nothing was built. He was not buried and then we're going to build something over his grave. It didn't happen like that. Now, he says that وَلَكِنْ قُبِّرَ الرَّسُولُ مَا نَام. The Prophet, he was buried and nothing was built over his grave. إِنَّمَا دُفِنَ فِي بَيْتِهِ. He was buried inside of his home. وَعَرَفْنَا الْعِلَّةِ. And we understand the reason for that, the reason why the prophets are buried exactly where they die. And he, alayhi salam, was buried inside of his home. Is to protect them from extremism. And in reality, now this is something that the ulama have spoken about as well. In relation to the graves of the other prophets, all of the prophets, there's not a single grave of a single prophet that is agreed upon that, there's the total ijma' upon the fact that this particular prophet is buried in this particular place, except the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam. All of the other prophets, there's statements that Musa may be buried here, that Noah is buried there, that this one is buried here, and so on and so forth. But there's not a single grave of a single prophet that it is confirmed and agreed upon that this particular prophet is buried in this particular place, with the exception of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam. So this shows you the great lengths that they went to in order to protect the graves of the Anbiya from ghulu and extremism. Just imagine this, because if you've been to Medina before, in spite of the guards being there, in spite of everything, all the protection and so on and so forth, you still find people at the grave of the Messenger of Allah here, so I'm making dua to him. Right? They try to sneak and do it, some of them are kind of out in the open with it until the police come and say something to them. But people still do it. So just imagine. And so this is why the Prophet alayhi, he went to great lengths to warn the people against the likes of these actions. And the Sahaba, they warned against it thereafter. And like this. Now, he says that وَمَاذَا لَوْ كَانَ الرَّسُولُ مَدْفُونًا فِي الْبَقِيعِ. So what do you think would happen if the Prophet was buried in al-Baqi', like with the rest of the Sahaba? Now, ماذا يكون عنده من الزحام والغلو وفعل الجهال. What do you think will happen from crowding and extremism and the action of the ignorant? لكن الله أجاب دعاء نبيه. But Allah Azza wa Jal answered the dua of his prophet when the Prophet alayhi salam, he says, Allahumma la taj'al qabri wathanan yu'bad. Oh Allah, don't make my grave to be an idol that is worshipped. Dua of the Prophet alayhi salam. Dua of the Prophet alayhi salam, and yet still you still find people making dua to him. You still find people doing it. Now, فأجاب الله دعاءه. So Allah, He answered his dua. وَدُفِنَ فِي بَيْتِهِ, and he was buried inside of his home. مُحَافَظًا عَلَيْهِ, in order to protect him, عليه السلام, or and protect his grave from being a place of worship. قال ابن القيم mentioned فأجاب رب العالمين دعاءه وأحاطه بثلاثة الجدران حتى اقتدت أرجاؤه بدعائه في عزة وحماية وصيانة. Allah Ta'ala, He mentioned, Ibn Qayyim mentions in these lines of poetry that the Lord of all that exists answered his supplication, and He surrounded it by 3 walls, in order that the extent of his dua can be responded to out of honor and protection and safeguarding of his grave. هذا الفرق بين قبر الرسول. So this is the difference between the grave of the Messenger of Allah عليه السلام and the grave of other than him from those graves that are built upon. فلا يشتبه علينا هذا بهذا. So this grave is not going to be resemblant to that grave with us. قبر الرسول مبني عليه وعليه قبة. So for the grave of the Messenger of Allah عليه السلام, it was built over later, and and this dome was placed there later. فعلى هذا يجوز البناء على القبور الأخرى وتجعل عليها قباب كما يقوله الخرافيين. So one should not come along and say, well, since the grave of the Prophet Muhammad is like this, then we can come later and build upon the graves of our Mashaykh, our Sufi scholars and the likes of this, like you find these people saying. Now, so this concludes that particular section. We stop there. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Allah knows best. Hada wa sallallahu sallam wa barik ala nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Same one.